Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you listen to The Scoop on alscoop.com.
Good afternoon, everybody, or whenever you're listening to this. Good night, good evening, good morrow. Isn't that more like medieval,
Good
right?
morrow.
Good morrow,
I've never
sir.
heard that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I've never heard somebody say that
Forward.
before, John.
I
you
think we're
ever-
going for good tomorrow.
How about, did you guys ever see Role Models?
Yeah, I did.
No.
Very good movie.
It's a good
I don't
movie.
think so.
Yeah, anyway. This is The Scoop. It's not a medieval podcast. This is Season 5, Episode 26. I am John DiCarlo, joined by the Sams again, Sam Newman, Sam Cohn. What's going on, guys?
Not much. My throat's been hurting a lot the last couple of days. I feel like you guys are probably recovering from last week's sickness, and I'm getting there.
I'm feeling good now.
I'm okay. I had been sick on and off for like a month. Sam was congested and sniffling and sneezing last week, but he's better now. We're all gonna make it.
We're all going to be fine. It's that time
Are
of
you
year.
taking anything? I'm gonna ask you the same thing.
I'm pounding tea like it's my job. Hot tea. That's what I'm taking.
No medicine, just the holistic.
Haven't taken any medicine
Yeah, there
yet.
we go.
Hey, this is a safe space. You can tell us.
It is a safe space, yes. And even if you were, if you're taking any illegal drugs, we probably have to toss you out of here. But
It's not a safe space to root for the New England Patriots in here, though.
Whoa.
But we'll get into that another day.
Anyway.
your Al Horford takes were something to behold before we started. So we have an interview with Rod Carey, Temple football coach, second year now, head football coach Rod Carey. It's kind of the main part of our podcast this week. Had a chance to talk to Rod for about 25 minutes this week about a number of different things, the roster, the 3 guys they added last week. We will preview tonight's Temple-Tulane game down in New Orleans. Since a 65-51 win over Temple back on January 11th, Tulane has actually lost 7 in a row. They haven't won since then. I think they've got some talent on that team, but they're on a losing streak. We'll talk some basketball recruiting. We'll talk some football recruiting, answer some mailbag questions, have some interesting ones this week. But like I said, I had a chance to talk to Rod this week. Temple is coming off his first season at the helm. They signed 3 guys last week that we talked about in the late signing period. So now next month, we're looking at getting started with spring ball already, and there are some position battles to follow. He has some interesting stuff here to say about Anthony Russo, about special teams, both sides of the ball. We talked about Walter Stewart, who have been courted recently. Cincinnati and Luke Fickell wanted him. Walter Stewart, of course, their defensive line coach, has done a great job with Quincy Roche, got career years out of Dana Levine. DeAndre Kelly, Ifan Maje has done a great job. Interviewed for the Penn State defensive line coach, too. So as of now, as we're sitting here now, of course, things could always change. They've held on to him in the offseason. We got a little into Quantel Raines' role as kind of like a Sam Franklin type player, how he calls plays, all sorts of good stuff here. So we're going to play this interview for you guys, and then we will react to it on the other side. All right, Rod, thanks for making time for us. I appreciate it.
No worries.
A lot of stuff we want to get into with you, but wanted to ask you first about the 3 new guys you've added this month in the February late signing period, Quantel Raines, Manny Walker, and Michael Neese, what those guys just bring to the program.
Yeah, well, Michael, obviously, with Hennessy going to the league, that was one that, we wanted to go ahead and look for that type who brings us that year. Because we really have a lot of good young guys in the barrel, but that's just it, they're young guys. So feel like Michael will come in and really compete for a job right away, and then maybe buy our young guys another year to develop and go from there. Manny, obviously, with the departure of Q, that was a need, but certainly feel like we have something that we didn't have there. I mean, just size and stature, that's a lot bigger than we've had there. And then there again, I think the loss of Mesday, Dana, those guys that played a lot, and DeAndre Kelly that played a lot, felt like we needed to bolster that numbers-wise too. Because, we like our young guys, but we needed to bring back that core that we thought we could. And so feel good about that. And then Quantel Raines, you lose 3 linebackers you're trying to bring. I know he's a down safety, but that's Sam Franklin type. Now, he's a traditional transfer, so he's going to have to sit a year. But certainly feel good about having him in the fold.
You could try to pursue a waiver, but that's always a crapshoot.
Yeah, right. It's 50-50, and we will, but it's 50-50.
Yeah. How do you, Rod, tell me the stories of how, we'll get into the portal stuff, but you guys have benefited from it too.
How do you, like, what are the stories behind those guys? I think, like, Adam had recruited Reigns, like a guy like Neese, like, and Manny. Like, how do you, because you probably have a lot of options. What was it about those guys? And I think you mentioned, talking before about Neese, like, you had a connection to him. What are some of the stories behind, like, you say, these are our guys. Like, we feel really comfortable with these guys.
Yeah, so first, the 10,000-foot view of it is that I'm not one of these coaches that hates the portal.
Right.
I like it because there's an in and out to it. Right? I don't always like the reasons that guys leave, and that's individual to specific guys. Certainly, I'm the scorned lover with a couple of them that left.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm that way. But when it comes to bringing these guys in, there's always a connection that you want, right? So you mentioned the one with Reigns. So Neese, his old line coach at Dayton, and Joe Tripodi, our line coach, played together at Northwestern.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Had a lot of inside information on him.
Yeah.
Manny, then, we cast a broad net and saw and really narrowed it in on him and really recruited him. That was important to us, is to get to know him. And as soon as we recruited him and heard what some of his former coaches had to say, to us it was a no-brainer. So really individually based. But I like the portal. It opens up another avenue of recruiting. Instead of just high school and junior college, it's a third vein to recruiting, and which is the lifeline to our program.
And talking about the portal, I mean, everyone's being affected by it. Like, Penn State had 21 guys enter the portal
Yeah.
last year. Auburn's top running back has entered the portal. You've talked about, saying, hey, it is what it is, like, but we want guys who want to be here. How do you work that out as a coach? I mean, do you literally sit down with some guys and say, like, I'm going to be upfront and honest with you as possible, these are the pluses, these are the minuses of it? Because ideally, like you said, you want to hold on to guys, but how do you walk that line as a coach in terms of, like, saying, yeah, I want you to stay, but you got to do what's best for you, because I'm sure it's not easy.
Well, I'll tell you what we're doing, and then I'll kind of share some numbers with you that I think that it's working. Is that really what I tell them is I tell them this: the strongest armies in the world are voluntary armies. So it's just like that in a football team. You have to want to be here. So it's an individual thing for sure when someone brings up a concern, but it's also, I address it with the team. Say, guys, like, and I addressed Q with the team. I addressed Kenny. Hey, guys, they didn't want to be here. That's fine. We don't want them here. We love them. We wish them the best. But we only want guys that want to be here. And then we move forward and we talk about it big terms and individually, like when Todd Centeio was sitting in front of me. Like, I love Todd Centeio, and I helped him on that thing. And certainly he didn't need a lot of help because he was going to be in demand, but wanted to help him on those things. But at the same time, like, okay, Todd, you didn't want to be here, then we don't want you here. Now, I think it's working. We've had 3 guys in the portal. And I think as you look just amongst our conference foes, I think we're in last or second to last in that. Now, those numbers could go up. They may not be stagnant. You never know who's talking to who.
Sure.
But I think that honesty and just having everybody make their own decision and knowing that it has to be that way, I think it's working.
We're about a month and a half out, taking a long view of it. How would you assess your first season at Temple?
Successful. Wanted more. Certainly wanted more. Certainly wanted more at the end of the season in particular. Thought the first half of the season was what we wanted. Last half of the season probably wasn't what we wanted. But certainly when you look at it in context of Temple football history, having 8 wins for the 10th time in the school's history is a big deal. So we're not going to lose that. But as coaches, we're never satisfied. We always want more. And the team does too.
And specifically on offense and defense, how would you evaluate the jobs that Mike did? Mike Rembich on offense and Jeff Nobles on defense, your coordinators there.
Yeah, when we're talking about the coordinators, I think you have to talk about all the
whole
coaches,
unit, yeah,
right?
sure.
Because it's not just them coaching
Right.
11 guys. But certainly was happy with the defense. And they had some times there, too, where play wasn't up to par. Certainly on offense, left a lot to be desired through the entire course of the year. Had glimpses of being pretty good. And when you have, and I say this all within context of, you have the first 1,000-yard receiver, you have the guy who sets the catch record, and and you have B. Mac, who was almost in those same numbers, and certainly have a freshman running back that was a true freshman All-American.
Right.
Just a lot to be desired on the offensive side, and then special teams, just plain simple, wasn't good enough for us this year. So looking at all that, I kind of said this to a lot of people. I think we were a really flawed football team last year for a lot of reasons. We take ownership in it, the players do. Transition that's been going on here. A flawed football team that if we make our first extra point in Cincinnati, we're probably playing in the championship game. So with all that being said, okay, let's get rid of some of the flaws, and I think we're on the right path.
On special teams, how much of it is tactical stuff, and how much of it is just upgrading some of the talent there? You got a couple guys coming in as kickers. I know you can't talk about them until they get here, but like, how much of it is just how much of it is talent versus like execution, or is it just a natural combination of both?
In special teams, it always leans a little more toward, and don't take this as anything but what my belief is in doing this over 20 years. It always leans a little more toward talent, an individual leg talent, and individual return talent. Certainly was disappointed in Isaiah this year in his returns. There were some scheme things in there too, but certainly disappointed with that, and disappointed the job we did getting him in a good position. Then certainly more disappointed in the legs when it comes to field goals and punting in particular. Thought our kickoff game was pretty good, actually. So you have to address those things with what you view those things are wrong as, and that goes to what we can't talk about yet.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Walter Stewart. It's been out there that you guys had to hold on to him this offseason.
Yeah.
He's been courted by a couple programs. He's obviously done a great job over the past couple of years. Coached an All-American, Conference Player of the Year at Northern Illinois, and Sutton Smith. Gets not just Quincy Roche, but Ifan, DeAndre Kelly, Daniel Levine, the guys you mentioned, get some career years. What is it about him as a coach that has kind of gotten him to that point, and gets you to the point where you're fending off other schools to keep him?
Well, first off, anytime we talk about Walter Stewart, it brings a smile to my face, because his position coach in college was my position coach in college, Steve Stripling. So we were raised by the same people, and so to see him having some early success in his career, I take that as a good thing. And that means we're doing something right when people want to hire your guys. Certainly have had the ability so far to keep them with us, and we're happy about that. But some of the things that he does is he relates really well to the players, but then he's a guy that is not just a good football coach now, but he's always wanting to learn how to get better. And when you have those three things, the relational, have good knowledge, and wanting to learn more, that's the recipe for a good coach.
You mentioned Isaiah in the return game. He's gone. Who are the next guys in line? Obviously, a lot of this will, of course, wash out in the spring. But, like, who are some of the guys off the top of your head when we say, like, this guy's ready to step up in the return game?
Well, I still think you saw in the game, Blue handled, the punt and kick returns, handled both. And, obviously he's special.
Right.
And so he's going to lead that charge. But then you got guys like Ray Davis. You got a guy like Kwesi, who's a young kid, Kwesi Evans, who could do it. And then there are some other guys in there, some defensive guys. So we'll get a good pool of return candidates as we go. But you feel like you got a guy who's executed at a high level in games, that's a good starting point.
Obviously, everything always evolves from season to season with players and personnel. But as a new staff, when you come in, are there things that you unravel from the playbook on both sides of the ball in like year two and say, okay, we were only ready to, like, for these guys to take like this much install in year one? Is there more to unfold in year two and year three as you get more comfortable with things, or they get more comfortable with you guys, or is that kind of overplayed?
Yeah, no is the short answer to that. The long answer is this: we taught everything. We weren't ready to execute everything, and I think that's where you'll see the improvement. Is the comfort in the knowledge leads to execution, and so I think we'll have a better execution, offense, defensively, and special teams on it. Which will be good. There are some things that just take a long time in football. And certainly, that's what we're working on right now. When no one's looking is when I say the important stuff gets done.
As a coach, obviously, like, when it comes to play calling and stuff, every coach have told me, like, we borrow from this, we borrow from that. People emulate what other people do. Just like a fun question for you. As a coach, as an offensive guy, like, do you ever just get like a random inspiration for play, call it Mike or call it one of your coaches, and like say like I woke up in the middle of the night and thought of this, or does stuff come to you like that? Do you have any like fun stories of like?
Yeah, Mike and I have a great relationship like that. where I'm on one end of the spectrum and he's on the other, I'm probably more the dreamer and he's probably more the, process-oriented guy. We're both process-oriented, but we're probably on the other end of the spectrum. Like, I will watch something, and whether it's our film or TV, and I'll say, Mike, did you see this? And he will have seen it, and I'll say, I want to do it, and he'll say, I don't. And so we'll fight about it and come to a good conclusion, but all in context of how does it fit us, and how does it fit what we're doing. And so, like, here, I'll give you a good little story. So we played early the week before. We played ECU the week before we played Memphis. And so Memphis played that Saturday after we played ECU. So I sat and I watched that TV copy live before we could get all the film. Obviously, the game had to be played. I paused it about in the middle of the second quarter, and I just called Mike. I knew he'd be doing the same thing. I said, Mike, I think we can run it on him. And he goes, I think we can too. And that's one of the few times we've initially agreed on something. So that's a fun one. I mean, he picked up right away, and it was in the same place.
How are you guys doing health-wise? You've had some injuries. Isaiah Graham-Mobley, Picozzi, I would imagine that they're maybe not ready heading into the spring. They're still recovering.
Yeah, you won't see those two in the spring. They're obviously on the mend, but you won't see them two practice at all in the spring, and have to get them going. And then there are quite a few ACLs from last year that were Kamir Brown's cleared, so you'll see him some in spring. Tyreek Young is not. So some of the different ACL guys that we had, some of them will be back, some of them won't. Really, it all goes back to the unofficial start of the football season for me, which is June 1st. And we want everyone to have the ability to be training full by June 1st. And so that's the target goal. We should have everybody there.
I know that you want to say I'm excited about a lot of guys on both sides of the ball. But like, gun to your head right now, give me like one guy you're really excited about seeing on offense heading into the spring, one guy you're really excited seeing on defense, whether it's just something they've shown you in the building or just something you saw the bowl practice, as someone who's kind of maybe at the forefront of your mind would say, I think this guy's ready to take a lead.
Well, I think with all the circumstances that have happened, the biggest thing I'm excited about to see is Trad Beatty with an increased reps role in the spring on how he's going to take and run with that.
Yeah.
And the path has been cleared for him with that. Tavon Ruley, because of the end of the year he had, I'd say there.
And you guys scholarshiped him, right?
Yep, we put him on. Ray Davis, how he matures and how he keeps coming, because that was a freshman. That we lose track of that sometimes on those things. And then and this will be past the spring, I'm really excited in summer and fall camp to see the linebacking core. Because seeing IGM play full-time, seeing Will play full-time, we lost a lot there, but we get a lot back. And see these young kids in there that are really going to be good. So that group, and then probably those 2 or 3 individuals.
Any of the redshirt freshmen along those same lines, guys that you've just seen even just make leaps and bounds just in the offseason? Yeah,
I mean, so Vondi Rigby, Jordan McGee, Kwesi Evans is a guy, Fox is a guy. I certainly think Jermaine Donaldson on the O-line. We're really looking forward to see him in spring, how he can compete and be in there. There's a lot of really high-quality guys like that.
You mentioned Trad. Obviously, there's competition at every position. Is it, again, this will play out, but like as of now, is it Anthony's job to lose, or do you go in and say, no, guys, this is... Yeah, how do you handle that as a coach?
So I've already told Anthony this. He needs to get better.
Right.
The critical mistakes that he made this year are the ones that stand out. And now, to his defense, we didn't have a lot of easy scores either that maybe can offset critical mistakes. Whether it's special teams or big plays on offense or, pick sixes on defense. We only had a few of them. So there's a give and a take there. But he needs to improve. And that's been said to him. But, yeah, as we're sitting here today, there's no one, I think, in the building and no one outside the building would sit there and go, well, I mean, it's obviously a competition between Trad and Russo. No, Trad has to make it a competition between Russo. Russo has 2 years of experience. Trad has been in games last year sparingly.
You talked about Ray Davis. We know what he can do so far, and he's young. I wanted to ask you about the guys that are going to push him and compete with them. And we talked about this back in December because you guys didn't sign him back, and you said, I like the guys we have. So I wanted to ask you specifically more about Tavon. I know Neely's coming off an injury, Onassis Neely, Ed Sadie, and Kyle Dobbins, and kind of just giving us a snapshot of like just breaking those guys down, where they are now in their development, and what made you say like, yeah, I think we're pretty good here at this position.
When you talk about Onassis, you're talking about that classic big back. And so really we're excited about him body type wise coming off of the leg to really see what he can do. We got a little glimpse of it last spring, but really excited about that. Really we're excited because of what we saw at the end of the year in games. Like that was different. That was really explosive and powerful in those things, and really excited about that. Ed Sadie got a little bit of work at the end of the year there, and he improved physically with no one seeing it from all the workouts to a point where he was on the field and he did not look out of place. And so really excited about him. And then Kyle, I'm really excited about Kyle because everyone keeps forgetting, I guess we've been talking about Kyle around here a long time, is that he was just a redshirt freshman last year.
Right.
He's a young player yet. And he's got a lot of speed to go with that. So each person a little differently excited for, and then you put Ray in there too, which obviously had an outstanding year. Yeah. And I think you've got a room that's going to have some real good competition. And I think there's the room, I think, part of the thing that gets coaches going is development, seeing guys develop, right? That's not sexy for anybody else, but it's really good for us as coaches. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the development, how that plays into the competition for that room.
When Q decided to transfer, he talked to me about some of the guys that he thought were next in line to replace him, guys he was excited about. I wanted to hear about the guys that you're looking forward to from a developmental perspective who are ready to kind of step up and fill that position.
So we felt like, even if Q came back this year, we felt really good about that room from the young guys. We'd moved Leighton Jordan there because we thought he could be a special guy there, and I still think that. Trayvon King's development as a young guy. And then AK, he played this year. In a crowded defensive end room, he played. And so those three guys...
Talking about Arnold?
Yeah, Arnold. Yeah. And those three guys, we're really excited about those three in the future that they bring. And then you add Manny into the mix, you really, numbers-wise, have the same amount of guys that you would have had returning. And you still are going to have to deal with the loss of Dana Mesday and Drake Kelly. So feel good about that room. Now, 3 of the 4 are unproven, right? With Arnold playing a little bit, but really feel good about that room. And then going forward, getting some good. We got some good ones in here.
And then when I talked to Matt, when he declared, he talked about Wisdom, Quarshi, and Jovan Fair before heading into the bowl game. Talked about him. I just asked him who's starting to stand on the line, and his name came up. Wanted to get your thoughts on him and whether it's Wisdom or someone else who's going to fill Matt's shoes there.
Well, we don't know who's going to fill Matt's shoes, and those are big shoes to fill, and probably not one guy.
Right.
So you're going to see a lot of things there go on and try to get. We really like our young talent in the offensive line. The reason we went out and got Mike Neese is because it's young. I would love to have Matt back selfishly. Now we're happy that he's going out.
Yeah.
It would have bought us another year of development for those young guys. So, but we moved Wiz in bowl practice because we thought this might happen. Wanted to give him a head start to see if he could get himself in the mix.
So this was just in bowl practice you moved him, and that quickly his peers were talking about
that quickly, because he came out and he's a strong guy that really we saw that immediate effect on the field. And so he's a guy, Hooper, who played a lot end of the year, is going to be a guy. Neese, obviously bringing him into the fold. You got Griff Sestilli. Jermaine Donaldson's a guy I talked about already. You feel real good about Wagugu. Klein's coming back. Isaac Moore's coming back. You have a lot of pieces that have some experience and have quite a bit of experience in there. But Wiz and Jermaine are probably the 2 young guys that you're sitting there going...
At center?
Yeah, I don't know at center. The pieces can fall all over. As long as maybe they pushing in there, maybe that allows us to move someone else somewhere. Like a Picozzi, a Klein, a Hooper, Wiz. All of those are options right there.
Yeah, you guys are leading the American with 4 guys who got combine invites, and I know that it can fluctuate from year to year. I mean, I thought Michael Dogby was going to get a combine invite last year, but there was a D-line class. But is that, I know it can change every year, but like, is that a sign? Obviously, Temple putting guys into the NFL is nothing new, but getting 4 guys in and leading the conference, do you think that's a sign as much as anything else that the program's starting to get a little bit more respect among NFL circles, where they say, all right, you know, we're going to look at a Chappelle Russell, we're going to look at a Sean Bradley and get these guys in here as well?
So Rich had said it earlier. That's the most we've ever had in the combine. So that in and of itself would answer to your questions like yes, for sure. But I also credit the way that they played this year. I don't think you got 4 guys in there if they didn't play that way.
Right.
They were supposed to play. So really feel good about that, and absolutely. And I think it's going to fluctuate every year, but hopefully it fluctuates only up.
What about at linebacker? Yes, you're losing good players in Sean and Chappelle. 2-part question there for you. Who you talked about earlier, being excited about the linebackers. Who steps up there in terms of production? And then who steps up in terms of a leadership position? You've talked about how much you love those guys and you wish you could spend more time with them. It sounds like a cliche question, but who steps up in terms of, like, you're losing voices there too? Like, Sean was one of those guys who said, like, Coach, I got you. I'm going to make sure everybody plays in the bowl game. You talked about how much you appreciated that. Who fills that void for you?
IGM. I mean, it's a real simple answer for us. He already has. He's already stepping into that role. Even though he's not fully participating right now, he is a guy that is completely invested and is a vocal leader. He's moved past just being a good teammate. He's moved into a leadership role where it's really mission accomplishment, and then did I take care of my people? He's understanding that, and he no doubt is a guy. But then you also have guys like BMAC who are going to be real strong leaders. I think Cozy, the leadership council that just got voted on, is real strong. Kristen Braswell's in there, Jaden Blue's in there. You got some guys that not only because of their play, but how they handle themselves off the field are viewed as leaders, and you know, some it comes very natural to. Some we have to train yet on what leadership really looks like. But that's normal.
Can you put in context just how far Jaden came from a guy who wasn't sure he was going to come back, had a handful of catches last season, to being, to setting all the records he set, being as dynamic as he was. And it wasn't just like a volume thing of like, oh, we were down, so we had to throw to him, whatever.
Right.
Like, he turned into a really good receiver, and now you're talking about him also as like a potential leader. That's a huge leap to make in a matter of months, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I can quantify it because I wasn't here when he left the team in 18. Like, he physically left the team. To see that, to being in the record books permanently as some firsts and volume stuff, is that I don't know that I can quantify that. And then I just look at my snapshot of first time I talked with him to now he's voted on the leadership council. That is such a rapid ascent that there's only one thing you can attribute that to, and that's him and his faith. He's a strong faith, and that is motivating him and driving him in everything he does.
And at tight end, you've got some pieces there. Who are you most excited about there?
Yeah, well, I think you got DMR who played a lot, Jarman who played a fair bit, and then you got Tyler Sear, who we got in the mix there at the end. That we took him last year. I think you got 3 guys. Again, that's a lot like the running back room, right? And like I told you earlier, there was only one guy I was disappointed in this portal, and that was Kenny Yeboah. He didn't finish what he started. And, that's a hugely disappointing thing. But with that being said, I'm really excited about that group, those 3 kids. And then bringing in the transfer from Purdue, Pittman, too, that he'll be here in the summer. I think that group is just going to be, it's going to be a lot deeper. It's just going to be good.
What's something, I don't know if you think of things this way, what's something you know about yourself now as a head coach, a year into this, that you maybe didn't know about yourself as a head coach when you first got here?
Oh, I think I spend more time as this year is gone, more time than any, and that's a product of coming to a new job. More time getting to know these kids. There's 125 of them that I'm charged with. I want to know all 125 as well as I can. So I've spent more time doing that than I have probably anything else. And that's one thing I've learned, the value of that when you're coming into a new situation, on how that you can't replace that as far as importance and time.
Final question for you, just getting settled into the area. How do you like it? And I'm going to ask you a food question. We're sitting here now. You're eating a salad.
Yeah, I know.
Give me the best meal you've eaten here since being here on either side of the river. I'm not asking you to be biased toward Philly or Jersey.
Okay.
Like what stands out to you food wise?
All right. So first, I love it here, and my wife loves it here. And she said to me the other day, she goes, "You're going to have a hard time in retirement ever get me to go back to Wisconsin." And like, we're both from Wisconsin, even though I went to the cities, the high school in the cities. I said, "Really? This is a girl from 2,000 people in her town that she grew up in." So she loves it. I love it. You know, the people and the area for sure. Food is an incredibly hard, because here's the other thing I find funny about Philly. You ask people in Philly, how's the food? They go, they kind of give me that, it's okay. And then I go out and eat, and it's like awesome. And I'm like, where's the come from? I'm like, it's really good. Moshulu's has been good. Ocean Prime has been good. Steak 38 has been good. D'Alessandro's, it's the best cheesesteak in my estimation. Ishkabibbles is real good too. Those are just to name a few that the reason I'm eating a salad right now is because the food is so good here.
Fair enough.
All right, so a lot of good stuff there from Rod. I think we've said this before. I think he's pretty self-aware. You know, I've sat down with some coaches before where they might take sometimes 5, 8, 10 minutes to answer a question. It's, you know, usually typically great content, but in Rod's case, he kind of gets right to the point. And I think he is really, really self-aware. He talked about the portal and talked about, you know, he said, certainly there's that one part he says, certainly I'm the scorned lover in a couple of these cases, you know, when losing Kenny Yeboah, he was pretty honest in saying, like, hey, I'm a little disappointed in Kenny. There's unfinished business here. You know, he got into the portal, got into, you know, Anthony Russo and saying that Anthony Russo has to play better. But again, one of the things I enjoy about his approach when I asked him about Anthony, and I said, you know, is this truly an open competition? You know, coaches will always say that, because he said he's really looking forward to seeing Trav Betty's progress. But he said, yeah, Russo has to play better. At the same time, he has 2 years of starting experience. So one of the things I do like about Rod is he's not about a ton of bluster. When Jeff Collins was here in his first season, he sort of, I don't want to say famously said, it wasn't like a national level quote, but he went into that game saying, oh, all three quarterbacks could play. And you could see Logan Marchi, you could see Frank Newtile, you could see Russo, and then they got their butts kicked. And then after the game, he's like, yeah, it was probably a little too much gamesmanship on my part. So Rod doesn't get too much into that. Sam, what was your reaction to some of the stuff he said?
Yeah, I'm gonna go off of what you said right now about just the quarterback situation. I kind of like that he's openly challenging Russo, and I think a problem that this program has recently is with Jeff Collins' tenure. Look, in his second year, Newtile kind of came in as, you know, he got you to 6-6 with the bowl game, but there wasn't really an open competition. Like, Russo looked well, but it was Newtile's job to lose. So while it's Russo's job to lose again this offseason, you're still challenging him with Trad Betty, because we don't know what Trad Betty is going to look like with his 10 reps, because he's always had Todd Centeo in front of him. Right. But like you said, John, I appreciate how candid Rod was. He gets straight to the point. He added a lot of guys that he's excited to see, which were some of the names that we had highlighted as well. Honestly, I don't think I've seen a coach be quite as honest as he was, so that was refreshing to see for sure.
I feel like we didn't get that all season from him. Like, he wasn't as candid in some press conferences. It felt like there were times where he would bounce around questions, like be like, "Oh, in practice we did this," but we didn't really see practice.
Well, I think sometimes you have to hold stuff to your vest, though. Just during the season. That was a big Collins thing too, because if you remember, like the whole injuries with Raquel Armstead, with the whole ankle thing down in Central Florida, where he no longer talked injuries about that. I mean, Rod told you who was hurt, who wasn't going to play, like whatever. I think, obviously you're not going to get as candid with a head coach is going to get candid and with a whole room of full of media than a one-on-one situation after the season's over and reflecting. But no, I feel like Rod is probably one of the more open head coaches that you'll see and straight to the point kind of guys.
And one of the other things that stood out to me, when I said, hey, is a situation in year 2 where you kind of unravel a little bit more from the playbook on both sides of the ball, and he said, you heard him just say just now, the short answer to that is no. We taught everything. We weren't ready to execute everything, and I think that's where you'll see the improvement is the the comfort and the knowledge will lead to execution. So I think we'll have better execution on offense and defense and special teams. There are just some things that take a long time in football. Sounds so very basic, but that's what he's hoping for in year 2. When you start these guys, it starts becoming muscle memory in terms of the playbook. I'll be interested to see what Trad can do too. I think that he's right. Russo has 2 years of starting experience, and it will be tough for Trad to unseat him as the starter because Anthony does have a body of work there. I think ideally the staff eventually wants. We know the type of quarterback they want. You talk to Justin Lynch and Jordan Lynch, like that's. I don't want to put this kid on a pedestal before he gets to Temple, but that's what they're looking at. Russo doesn't quite give you that. Trad gives you a little bit of that. Again, Trad Betty's got a long way to go. By no means are we going to gas him up here and say, oh, he's going to be the starter week 1 at Miami. But I thought he handled that question about as well as he could, and just saying, yes, Russo's the starter, has a leg up on the starting role, but he definitely has to play better. And he said, and some of those major mistakes that he made are going to be the enduring ones that people remember.
Yeah, and exactly that point. I think if you look at their success in history at Northern Illinois, the quarterbacks they kind of went with were your dual threat, and not that Anthony Russo can't move with his, but he's not.
Yeah, he's a little bit. You're right. He's a little bit more mobile than people give him credit for.
But he's not going to beat you as a dual threat guy. Mm-hmm. He's going to have to beat you with his arm. And I think that's maybe why they tried to get Centeo more involved, just because he added that dual threat part where he could run, and you didn't know whether he was going to run or pass it. But also, he might not be as good of a passer as Anthony, and his pocket presence surely he left a lot to be desired. Because I don't know if you guys remember, but I mean, he took a lot of sacks in the pocket that he shouldn't have this season.
Yeah. Again, you can hear him say there he's really high on Isaiah Graham Mobley. Of course, Isaiah Graham Mobley you're not going to see in spring ball. You won't see Vincent Picozzi in spring ball. You heard him talk about how high they are. I asked him about Wisdom Quarshie, potential replacement at center. And here's a guy who was practicing as a defensive lineman out of St. Joe Hamilton. And Rod said they moved Wisdom over in bowl practices, and that quickly people were impressed with some of his reps that he was putting forward in the bowl practices. They're high on Jermaine Donaldson, another South Jersey lineman from Eastern High School out in Voorhees. So I always like covering spring ball. The position practices, the position battles are fun to cover and project, and we'll get more access to the assistant coaches, meaning Mike Urimovich, Jeff Knowles, all the position coaches, Walter Stewart, Joe Tripodi, Melvin Rice, and those guys. So I have been told that it'll probably be a similar spring practice schedule in terms of media availability, where we will get to talk to some of the assistant coaches. I think, was it the first 5 or 6 preseason practices in August were completely open. I don't know how it's going to be in the spring, if it's just going to be the last 20 minutes again. But either way, we'll have a lot of spring football coverage for you coming up. Let's head over to basketball. As we said, Temple is playing Tulane tonight. A chance to get on a 2-game winning streak, a dangerous 2-game winning streak.
Don't let them get hot.
Yeah.
What's that line from Major League?
I literally just thinking that he gets like one. What number does he get to? Is it 3? He goes, that's called a winning streak. A tremendous movie. You know who was an extra in Major League? Todd Zalecki, MLB.com Phillies reporter. When you were in my class, he came and spoke to you, right?
No, I don't think he
wasn't. He was. They filmed most of Major League in Milwaukee and not in Cleveland. And there's the scene where the bus comes back and they're coming back into town by the stadium, and everybody's like holding up signs. Todd was an extra in that part, and he still to this day has this whole sign with like an Indians logo on it. So I don't know. Little tip of the hat to Todd Zalecki, who most certainly is probably not listening to our podcast today. He's watching Lawrence McCutcheon in the batting cage. How are you that? Oh God! How are you that bad on Twitter, Howard Eskin? How are you that bad?
That was brutal.
I thought it was a bit, but I guess
Lawrence
it's
McCutcheon
not.
Play for the Rams?
Play for
long time ago.
Matt Breen found his football card and posted it. So anyway,
what are the Phillies? He's down in Clearwater, Florida, right? That's
enjoying some great weather, which we are not enjoying. We're enjoying. It's cold and it hasn't snowed, so it's useless.
Well, Temple's going to, I guess, probably some nicer weather.
A little segue there from Sam Newman. Speaking of nicer weather, we go down to Louisiana. So, Temple's playing at Tulane tonight. So, they're coming off that 97-90 win over SMU, a win that they desperately, desperately needed. We'll touch on the SMU game briefly and then go into what they're facing tonight against Tulane. A lot to like from this game. Obviously, I think it showed you what they're capable of. There's so many different storylines here. They're down J.P. Mormon. who it sounds like probably won't play tonight either after taking that hard fall at Memphis. He's out. Dre Perry probably going to be out again. We
Probably game time decision.
Yeah. And probably going to be without Arashma Parks, who re-aggravated that same right shoulder that he had surgery on. So you're down JP and Dre to start the game. Arashma goes out early on, and they come back from 19 down. Certainly SMU was ridiculous in terms of shooting in the first half, shot 63% overall, better than 64% from 3, 9 of 14 in the first half. And it was a good game all around for a lot of guys that need to have a great game. Monty Scott, of course, gets a Temple career high of 22. Quentin Rose was great in overtime, scored their first 9 points in overtime. Aaron and his staff coached a great game. They coached well against the zone. They played some small ball. Again, I don't think we're sitting here saying, at 12-11 and 4-7 overall heading into tonight's game that they're all of a sudden an at-large team, because they're not. They have a lot to prove, but I mean, sounds simple enough to say, but they absolutely needed this one and need to show some of the stuff that they showed.
Definitely a fun game to cover.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start there. Different kind of Temple basketball game than we've seen. That small ball lineup was a really cool difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that without JP, without Dre, and then Arashma goes down. So they start playing this small ball lineup of correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like Alani, Q Rose, Monty Scott, Josh Pierre-Louis, and Nate.
Yeah,
Something
pretty much.
So a small ball lineup, and they said, so one thing that they've struggled with is playing against that 2-3 zone. And I said it in the, what game was it? The ECU game, when they came back, in the second half, when they kind of figured out that 2-3 zone, was because they played a high-low game with Jake Forrester on the block and Quentin Rose at the high elbow, or at the elbow or the high block. And when you have that 1-2 man game with guys that can create their own shots, Jake can finish inside, Quentin Rose can finish from mid-range. It worked. They were able to penetrate the 2-3 a lot better. Having Quentin Rose at the elbow opens up the floor for them and just gives them different opportunities, different looks. And that's exactly what they did against SMU. And they mentioned it post-game, was that having Quentin Rose really open up the floor, having him at the elbow against 2-3. I think that's something they're definitely going to look to go back to. But it was cool to see Temple just give a different look than we've seen, because this big man rotation of 6 guys that have kind of fluctuated in and out, played different minutes, there hasn't really been much consistency. Even Jake Forrester had a 13-minute game against ECU, so there's been almost no consistency with minutes across these 6. They're now down to 3 of them, and to see them just kind of push more towards small ball, give Monty Scott more minutes, give Josh Pierre-Louis a little bigger of a role, and it worked. They came back, they stormed back, and were able to finish in overtime.
I think Aaron McKee has been listening to the Scoop, because there's not been a bigger supporter of Monty Scott and Josh Pierre-Louis than John DeCarlo over here. So, they once they got its spin and rolls in that game, they both step up and rose to the occasion. And I mean, Josh was just kind of lightning in a bottle for them. He came off the bench. He made 3 huge threes. He had an incredible charge take. Had a block. He just is that type of flashy player that's, you never know what you're, like McKee said, he's a wild card. You never know what you're really going to get, but he always is there to spark, and he really did spark them. And then Monty Scott finally got it going, and he really took advantage of an opportunity, and he seized it. So I feel like we said, with increased minutes, you're just going to see him continue to have success, and I think you probably can bank on that tonight. If he sees some increased minutes, he'll play better.
Well, even just from a confidence standpoint, not only did the team need it, but guys like Monty Scott really needed it. A guy like Josh Pierre-Louis needs it. Anybody, Josh wasn't a McDonald's All-American, but he came in as a top 150 recruit. He was super stoked to play with Nate, his brother, and he's had his ups and downs. He had the 15-point game on the road at USC. The funny thing is, he was not known as a jump shooter coming out of Roselle Catholic. He was known more as a guy that could drive, get to the rim, finish. But it takes him a little while to get his 3-point shot off, but his form's not terrible. But, that's what got him going. Sam, you mentioned the charge that he took.
He's had a handful of air balls off the side of the backboard, but he sticks it, he sticks it.
And the funny thing is, what you said, Aaron says you got to take the good and the bad with the good as a freshman. I mean, he missed 4 free throws. He didn't make a single one. Yeah,
but he played more than 25 minutes. Of course, they were very shorthanded. But, I mean, they got a good game out of Damian Moore. He plays a shade over 10 minutes. He goes perfect 4-4. He had that hook shot. Had
that was the best Damian's
dunk.
played all year, I would say.
Yeah, four boards. Quentin Rose, the maddening career of Quentin Rose continues. But, he shot 9 of 20, 1 of 4 from 3, but 6 of 8 from the line, 8 boards. did not turn the ball over once in more than 41 minutes, and he was fantastic in overtime. Hit that long three. I mean, even Jake Forrester's numbers weren't bad in the little less than 18 minutes that he played. But Monty Scott's contributions were huge. I had to chuckle after the game. He said, I didn't play as much as I wanted to in the last game. He didn't play in the last game, period.
Yeah.
He didn't play at Memphis, and then he played sparingly in the 2 games before that. So if it was Aaron's intention, I can't say we asked him this directly, but if it was Aaron's intention to say, I'm going to sit you down and kind of try to light a fire, it worked. So if that's what the goal was there, kudos to Aaron for pushing the right buttons there. But yes, I have been giving Monty Scott the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying he's going to drop 22 in every game, but you see what he's capable of. Some of that little craftiness, like dropping in a little floater, a lean or a fadeaway. I mean, he can score.
Yeah, that step back fadeaway they hit was.
And they're going to need that again tonight. They're going to. I mean, if they make any sort of push down the stretch, they're obviously going to need JP to come back. They're going to need Dre Perry to come back healthy, but having Monty come off the bench like that, I'm not breaking any news here when I say it, for a team that is not going to shoot, they're not going to shoot 60% every game. I mean, that, they were 68% from the field in the second half, 83% in overtime. They only missed once in overtime. But if Monty can give you that, if this turns out to be the game that sparks them in the right direction, then this was more than just a win that pushed you over 500.
2 things. I'm going to steal John's phrase here. This is a hill I'm going to die on, and I got 2 of them.
I'm not the only person who came up with that, right?
I know, but you're the
but if you want to, if that's for other
I'm,
people to say, if you want to say that I came up with that, then go ahead.
We'll do the Monty thing first. So I don't want to play devil's advocate. I really want.
I want you to play devil's advocate.
I really do like Monty Scott, but I said it at the beginning of the season, and I'm going to say it again now. If Monty Scott isn't doing this, what he did against SMU, putting up 22, even putting up like 10 plus points, he's not bringing much to this team. He's not an especially good passer. He's not an especially good defender. He's not especially good off the ball, like moving around. He's
just need him to
score.
That's
He's a pure scorer. And John said to me earlier in the year, he's like, this is a kid that's coming in and is going to be like a pure scorer, and that's kind of what they want him to fill in, like what kind of Quentin Rose's role is. And that is awesome. He would be great at that role because he's got a really clean jump shot. He can elevate mid-range. He can create his own shot. He can knock down shots in traffic, which he did. He had an unbelievable and one in the SMU game with a guy literally right in his face. But if he's not doing that, he's not doing much else. That's, I think, a big part of the reason why his minutes have largely deteriorated the last couple of games. Then he comes out and has a game like this, and I'm all for it, but I'm going to stand by that point that if Monty Scott isn't a pure scorer, not a dead-eye shooter, he's not doing much. The other hill I'm going to die on is Alani Moore playing well.
Knew you were going to go there. I knew
this team playing well. I haven't looked at the numbers. I haven't looked at the exact statistics, but I defy you to find a game that the whole team played well and Alani Moore played like crap. I think a lot. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's because he's just a senior confident point guard, but he went 4 for 8, had 14 points, and had an unbelievably clutch 3 in the final minute to take them up by 1.
To play a little devil's advocate here, he did have an unbelievably dumb foul right before that too.
Okay,
so.
Fair. But when Alani Moore is shooting the ball well, and I think when he's got the ball in his hands and he's creating for his teammates, I think he creates for his teammates best when he's confident because he's hitting his shots first. I think that's what gets him more juiced up. Then he finds his guys, and then his guys do more. It just builds. It's like he lays the foundation, and the team builds off the bricks that he's laying.
Do you remember, speaking of hills that you might die on, do you remember who you said was going to be the team's leading rebounder at the outset of the season?
I did, and that was very, very, very wrong. Justin Hamilton.
Yep. Now Justin got the start.
I'll go
on
2 for
Saturday.
3. That's 66% from the field.
I understand. I understand why you might say it because I do think he has ability. I mean, we've seen it, but he just has not been able to find his rhythm at all. He hasn't been a great rebounder, hasn't been a great scorer, hasn't been great with playing his back to the basket. But it's possible that they could roll out that same starting lineup tonight if all 3 of those guys are out.
Yeah, I think
then I'd probably start Q, Jake Forrester, Justin at that power forward position, Alani and Nate. You bring Monty off the bench, hoping he gives you something. You bring Josh off the bench, hoping you get something. You bring Damian Moore off the bench, hoping you get something. And that's it. You're down to 8 scholarship players tonight, probably. Because, again, just where we're getting that number is Ty Strickland sitting out. And, of course, you have
Damian Dunn.
You have Damian Dunn is
probably
going to be that. Temple can't announce him as a medical redshirt because all the paperwork has to get into place. But Damian Dunn's out. Ty Strickland is sitting out as a transfer, and then of course JP and Dre are out too. So
Is this the night we see Tim Waddington?
who knows?
Wow, what a sight that would be. Are you for it?
I mean, when you
If
only
he-
have 8 scholarship players probably suiting up, I mean, you have to probably reach your hand out.
I mean, an 8-man rotation isn't the end of the world.
I'm sure. No, I mean
It's not ideal,
Most
but-
coaches at this stage of the game
Play an 8-man
play an
rotation.
8-man rotation, so that's nothing. You just don't want to go
It's
into
just-
a game, obviously,
yeah,
saying
but,
you
but
only
the
have 8
thing
guys.
is,
yeah.
they've gotten a lot of their bigs have gotten in foul trouble. So.
Yeah, it's just not Temple basketball because they've said all
Yeah.
year their strength is in their numbers. So they're
they'll be
shifting
going
the
against
tide.
what's worked for them.
Yeah.
essentially.
So we'll look at this Tulane team that looked good at the Liacouras Center when they beat Temple back on January 11th. Again, they've lost 7 in a row now. They have not won since then. This is another program in the American that has really tried to benefit from transfers, KJ Lawson among them. They've got 3 guys that score in double figures. Tashawn Hightower averages 15 a game. Lawson averages 14 a game. Christian Thompson averages 12.9 a game. They are 6-4 at home, a team that's reeling, a team that can score, though. So, and I think they're actually favored by 3. I'm the worst at looking at the lines. A lot of my friends who bet will come to me and say, what do you think of Temple tonight? And I'll say, what's the line? And they are amazed that I never look at the line, but I looked at it today. I think Tulane is favored by 3. But
Which
yeah,
is totally fair. I mean, they
Yeah.
did beat Temple by 14, 15 points last time they played
Yeah.
each other. So, and the
Yeah.
game's at home.
So, I mean, it's definitely a winnable game for Temple. But, again, you have some guys that you have to account for. What's your general feeling on tonight? You think they win this game? I mean, obviously they could, they should, but everything's been an adventure this season. Have they, one game doesn't make a season, but have they started to turn the corner here, or would you expect that they'll kind of, go down there tonight and fall victim to some of the same things that have plagued them all season?
I'd honestly be surprised if they laid an egg tonight. Just because Tulane is, if you look at their conference record, they're 2-9.
Right.
They're 1-4 at home. They're 1-5 away. That one away win coming at the Liacouras Center. The Liacouras Center, there's Temple. When Temple was really a team that was reeling and looking to really find an identity and didn't know who they were. I think you can make an argument that SMU might have been a turning point, and we'll see about that tonight, obviously. But I feel like if they can play the type of basketball that they did their SMU, then they're definitely going to be able to keep up with Tulane. And Tulane, their team, if you look at just statistically, you have Hightower, Lawson, Thompson, and everybody else. And it's not like Temple's defense has played compact defense the past couple games. I mean, SMU shot over 60% in the first half, and they still put up 90 points. Granted, the game went to overtime, but it's not like they're playing lockdown defense. But, if they can hold those guys in to a certain respect and play that small ball that worked for them on Saturday, I think they have a real shot at winning. And if you just let Nick Thomas shoot a little bit. If you look at their last game out against East Carolina, this was at Tulane. Nick Thomas played 29 minutes and he shot 2 of 11 from beyond the arc. So maybe Temple might want to let him
You lay
shoot
off
a little
him
bit.
a little bit. Sam, your thoughts?
So I was going to add, similar to what Sam was saying, that you have Hightower, Walker, and Lawson. Those are, it's them and then everybody else. The last time Temple played them, they had 17, 17, and 16 respectively. So you got to find a way to shut those guys down, or at least limit their production, force other guys to do something, force other guys to get more involved in the game. And they played an 8-man rotation last time. So one thing that Temple's struggled with in games, specifically the Cincinnati game and the Memphis game, was when you can shut down their best player, you can shut down their second best player. Teams that have that third or fourth option, that's what kills Temple. Temple does a really good job of figuring out those one or two guys. It's teams that have options beyond that. You look at the St. Joe's win when Ryan Daly wasn't doing anything, they blew out St. Joe's because St. Joe's didn't have any other options. So I think the biggest thing is, these guys, what they did, them a lot better, their tendencies a lot better. You got to right the ship a little bit, and you got to find yourself. You built confidence off of the SMU game. How do you run with that, and how do you just string together one game at a time? String together a second, third, fourth, whatever. Because at this point, you mentioned you're not getting an at-large bid. At this point, you're fighting for a good record, a good seed in the American Conference tournament.
And then, of course, after tonight, those Villanova Wildcats looming on Sunday at a
Sold-out crowd.
Sold-out Liacouras Center. We will be there, and then we'll obviously be talking about that next week as well. Let's dip into some basketball recruiting coverage here. Sam, you talked to JoJo Peterson, a point guard, that they are recruiting at Pisgah Christian School.
Pisgah Christian High School.
Pisgah Christian High School. So obviously Stevie Mitchell. Mount Pisgah, sorry. Stevie Mitchell from Wilson West Lawn, a top 100 point guard, is a huge priority for them for the 2021 class. But they're also looking into Georgia. Chris Clark went down to see him. In terms of rankings, Peterson hasn't generated a ton of buzz yet, but if you read a little bit about him, it sounds like he's getting better. And this is what this Temple staff has tried to do, get ahead of the curve on these guys, whether it's a Jaleel White or a Quincy Adamakoya. And he's 6'4". He's emerging as a scorer, as a playmaker. You talked to him. The story's up on the site now if you haven't checked it out yet. What was your conversation like with him?
So I guess my biggest takeaways about JoJo are, between talking to him and watching some of his game clips online, are he's the kind of kid that wants to break you down one-on-one, and he wants to get to the rim. But the thing that really surprised me was his court vision, the way he sees the floor. He wants to get his own. He wants to be the number one option on his – I mean, he's in high school. He wants to be that number one option guy. He can get downhill. He likes to attack the basket. He can finish creatively around the rim. He can but the way he sees the floor and gets his teammates involved is really awesome to see. He talked about when Chris Clark went to go watch him play against Walker, he called himself a good rebounder. Chris Clark told him, you can rebound the ball a lot more. And as a guard, I understand where Chris Clark is coming from. If they're going to pull in a 6'4" guard, he wants him to be a guy like Nate Pierre-Louis that's going to be on the glass, because he wants all five guys to attack the glass there. So rebounding and just being an aggressive downhill player. Shooting is the biggest thing he said he wants to work on, because he knows it's not really where he wants to be. He's a pretty good shooter, but he said the biggest thing I want to fix is become a consistent jump shooter so I can score at all three levels, because he knows he can get to the rim. He knows he can create his own shot. He's got a good handle on the ball. He can create for his teammates. The question is, can he be a consistent shooter at all three levels so he can make himself more of a dynamic threat offensively?
So we'll keep track of his recruitment, obviously. Now, Temple hasn't offered him yet, but some other programs are starting to sniff around. Belmont, Virginia Tech is recruiting him, hasn't offered yet. But we'll keep you updated on that. Again, as I said before, Sam's information there that this is the type of guy they try to get in early on. If he goes out and has a good April AAU season, starts to blow up, which he could, and that's typically the trajectory of some of these guys in April, and then in July, if he really does blow up, Temple, if they really like this kid, they'll be able to say, hey, we got in on the ground floor with you.
Yeah, so one more thing I was just going to mention off that. He did mention on the phone, so Elon is the only school that has officially offered him. Other schools interested are Virginia Tech, Belmont, Wofford, Georgia State, and Kennesaw State, Monty Scott's former school.
Yeah.
A little Al Scoop fun fact here. I applied to Elon and got in.
Wow.
Here we go.
In there, yeah.
Let's go.
Not to brag.
Not to play basketball?
No, not to play basketball. Unfortunately.
Dynamic point guard Sam Newman spurns Elon to just live a normal life at Temple. We'll talk about that later in the podcast. And then, of course, Sam, you and Graham kind of collaborated on the Quincy Adamakoya story. Graham had talked to him, had to take a couple days away. Want to wish Graham the best. Had a death in the family this week, so certainly sending our best out to him. But you collaborated with him on that story. Again, I don't know, did you write that lead or did Graham write that lead about the highlights whenever?
I wrote the lead and he kind of tidied it up. So
I liked it. It is right, because it's true, because, you know, when there have been the ups and downs of Temple's season, and there have certainly been ups and downs with Temple's season, a lot of people will just scroll through Twitter and look at the latest Quincy Adamakoya highlight, and a lot of them involve him, you know, bombing away from three-point range, but he can finish at the rim. He's got a little bit of a mid-range game. And again, it looks like, we haven't seen him play live. I've talked to some people who have. You see some of the clips online. You know, again, they had to fend off. You know, there were schools like Georgia Tech and Marquette and Georgia trying to get him to reclassify to 2021. But he's good. I mean, he's a really good player, and he does look like a steal who can come in and play right away. That story is up on our site right now. We had a clip, or a couple clips, or maybe at least one clip from last week's podcast when Graham had talked to Quincy. Brings a lot of shooting. I think one of my favorite things about the story. Again, you can read it. It's up on the site right now for subscribers. There's some good stuff there. where he just breaks down what he sees wrong with the team this year. I don't think he did it in in an arrogant or a condescending way, but some good stuff there. Again, Quincy Adams-McCoy is one of 2 players who have signed so far with Temple, the other player being Jaleel White from Wildwood Catholic. Wildwood Catholic actually got upset by St. Joe Hamilton last night, I believe. So I think we had talked about that last week, because I think Jaleel's season high this year was 37 against St. Joe Hamilton.
Yep.
St. Joe Hamilton traditionally has not had they've gotten a lot better over the last few years. Paul Rodeo is their coach. His father, also Paul Rodeo, has been a long-time St. Augustine prep coach. They've produced a ton of D1 players. So some good stuff up on the site right now in terms of recruiting coverage.
One quick thing I want to say about Quincy,
Yes.
just in the story that Sam and Graham wrote. At first glance, I was like, I don't know if I love that he said it, but as I kind of read into it more, I kind of do really like that Quincy said, the quote you guys have in here about, I expect them to probably win a few more games. The defense is so compact, and they're just baiting the jump shots and clogging the lanes for guys like Nate, Quentin, Josh, to create off the bounce. But he, in a way, he was like complimenting them, but like he knows what he wants to bring to this team. He knows what he wants the future to be. Because at first, like, is he just kind of ripping this team apart? But as I read it a second and third time, I was like, that's not what he's going for. He's looking for, he knows what he wants to bring and what he can bring.
But maybe he also knows the style of basketball Aaron McKee wants to play, and it's not like, I don't think McKee can play a style yet with the players.
Yeah,
bringing
absolutely.
in a guy like Quincy
Because
to play,
Quincy's what Aaron McKee wants in
Exactly,
terms of like a body for that starting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought was pretty interesting in the story is he pretty much told Graham that he wanted to kind of be like the Quentin Rose guy for Temple,
I did like that too.
where he's to be able to get a lot of shots off the dribble and coming off of screens, and he's probably a better shooter than Quentin Rose was coming in for sure. Rose had to very much to work on his shot, so he's a pretty confident kid, and it seems like he's going to get a lot of playing time as a freshman if health bearing, which nothing we've seen is Jaleel White is the one that we.
And I mean, Jaleel's fine. I mean, he had some. I think we talked about this last week. Jaleel had some. He had the meniscus tear. Excuse me, back in April.
Pulled his quad above his meniscus.
Quad. Some of the corresponding stuff that can happen with injuries like that. And he did have a little bit of swelling at the beginning of the season before he started rounding into form. But I mean, he's been playing. He should be fine. Adam McCoy's fine. Yeah. They've got that one scholarship as of now. One scholarship left. I would anticipate. I will tell you guys. There's a little tease here. If you're subscribers. Stay tuned to our basketball message board. We will have some information, a lot of information on the players that they're going to be hosting. We're starting to compile a list based off of just talking to some people. I think they're definitely going to have several recruits in attendance for Sunday's game, which is logical and smart. So for our subscribers who are listening, stay tuned for that. If you have not decided to subscribe yet, I would suggest you do, because we try to get you the best and most updated recruiting information on both sides of the ball.
I'm in the works of trying to get my dad to subscribe.
That's tremendous salesmanship. I love it. Appreciate that.
I think the point I was going for there is just barring unforeseen circumstances. It's not like Quincy Adams-McCoy is hurt, but barring unforeseen circumstances like an injury, he's going to play a major part in the role. Like once he comes on campus, which is
absolutely, yeah, because you're going to need it with, again, as maddening as Quentin Rose can be. And I'm with you.
Quincy can take over that role for him.
And
as a
maybe
true
just
freshman,
be more.
That's a lot to ask, but
I will say I'm waiting to see a name with a little F next to it. I need a forward between Quincy Adams-McCoy, who's probably going to play like around the 3. You have Jaleel White, who's a little bit bigger, but another wing guy. Guys like JoJo Peterson, Stevie Mitchell, who they're looking at in the 2021 class. Like, where's their big man's coming?
I think they'll be scouring the transfer and grad transfer market for a big. I don't think that. Last week one of our readers had asked us to project out our starting 5, and I think I said one of those players is a mystery player we don't know about yet, a grad transfer big. I think that's a priority for them. So I think between now and
Quincy
October
also
of
said
next year,
that
it's going to be interesting.
he thinks that Jake needs like a twin tower next to him.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he needs some help.
So even he knows. But to go off what I was saying about Quincy is with how we were just talking about, you want an F or a guard. What I thought was interesting is, so on Rivals is listed as a forward, but with the Georgia, he made first team all region, and the plaque has him listed as a guard.
Yeah,
so
he's basically
he's
a wing.
Basically a wing.
Yeah, basically
even Jaleel White's listed as a small forward, but he plays point
guard. Yeah. So, and again, I think Aaron's taking a long look at this and saying that he probably needs a few pieces, and I think that they're obviously encouraged by what Josh Pierre-Louis did on Saturday. Josh said his ups and downs. And your story, Sam, you know, we should mention too, we have a story about Josh Pierre-Louis on the site. Sam talked to him after the game Saturday, and I think he said something to the effect of like, I don't have a problem with no minutes as long as we're winning. So at least outwardly he has the right attitude. But I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in some competition at point guard too. Somebody who can shoot, somebody who can run a team. It's not the worst thing in the world if you have a couple guys who can bring the ball up the floor.
Josh showed you in that game that he doesn't need to be the player that brings up the ball. Like he can play as
right.
kind of like a combo guard where you know, maybe he could be bringing the ball up the court, but he also can play off the wing, really off the ball, and make things happen.
Yeah. On the football recruiting front, again, a lot of offers from Temple have gone out to the 2021 class. One of them, again, if you've had the chance to check out the site this week, Sam Newman talked to Dominic Jadich, who is at Mater Dei Prep up in North Jersey, had 22 sacks according to NJ.com, which is a ton. Might have led the state unofficially, but Temple's recruiting him as a center. Again, you can check that story out on the site as well. But Sam, your thoughts on having talked to him?
He's an interesting kid for sure, just because of, like you mentioned, the stats purposes and coming in and recruiting him to play a different position. But I feel like Temple's got a real good shot at this kid, just for the position-wise where we want to play. I mean, he said, you know, him and Joe Tripodi are on the same page, like kind of like smash mouth kind of guy, like that's the type of football that he wants to play. But he seems like, you know, he also talked about how they talked about Matt Hennessy's development and how that the coaching staff also brought that up to show, you know, kind of show him what they've been able to do at the center position. Right now, he doesn't have to really worry about carrying the torch that Hennessy left, because, you know, this is going to be up to Vincent Picozzi or Wisdom Corsier, or we'll see where that ends up going.
Even maybe, I don't know. When I asked Rod about that in the interview, he mentions a lot of guys who he likes along the offensive line. He mentions Hooper too, so we'll see. I mean, you're right. That center position,
just
the starter there.
He also mentioned that Klein was they could move Klein the guard, right?
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, like you said, in Jadich's case, or Jadich, you know, if he does come in as a center, again, like Rod said it before, he's not unlike a lot of college football coaches in that both of these guys are both guys on both sides of the ball. If they had their druthers, they would really like to redshirt him. And he even talks about that with Nice and saying like, hey, he comes in as a guy who can play right away and then just give some other guys another year to develop. So check out Sam's story there. We'll have a lot more recruiting coverage for you in the coming days, in the coming weeks. Let's get over to the mailbag. Plenty of questions here from the message board and a couple from Twitter as well. First one comes from Mike TB31 from the message board. Is North Broad your burner account where you guys post insider information? That's a screen name on L-Scoop. Just kidding. Temple becomes the number one team in the nation in a men's sport that we don't currently carry for the NCAA. Which sport would you choose, or which would be the most exciting to cover? Hockey, wrestling, baseball, or something else? Now, of course, there's club hockey. Sorry to cut you off, Sam.
You're good.
With club hockey at Temple, club wrestling. I think wrestling used to be a Division I sport at Temple. Baseball used to be a Division I sport, but it's club. So which would be the most exciting to cover as a number one team in the NCAA?
I think my go-to answer would be hockey, just because that's like a good group of guys. I had two of them on the Cherry Tribune podcast. They were super nice, and there is a Temple ice hockey media outlet group that covers Temple ice hockey, and I've heard only great things about covering that team, and the guys on that team are a really good group of guys. So that'd probably be the go-to answer. But other than that, I'd probably pick an interesting or different sport like fencing, who's one of the best in the nation.
Yeah. So fencing, Nikki Frank is a former Olympian and a legend at Temple, like a fencing legend nationally. You're right; they've been good. Sam, what would your choice be?
I'd probably just say baseball.
Me too.
I'm a huge baseball junkie, and I feel like, you know, sometimes with hockey and stuff like that, you might miss some things. Basketball, you know, there's times you miss things. Baseball, you're not really going to miss much, you know.
Yeah,
it's one of those sports you can hear for sure.
Yeah, and of course, for those of you who are familiar, when Temple did have a D1 team, they played up at Ambler, and it's a shame that they had some good players come through the program. But with the games being played up at Ambler, you know, Temple has a hard enough time getting students to come down to football games where it's like a major D1 sport and it's college football. Even with that being on campus or off campus, with students getting free transportation to the game, free food when they get there, and a free ticket, they still have problems getting students there. So when they were playing up in Ambler, attendance was an issue. But I mean, if Temple were to ever have a baseball stadium on campus, it's a cool thing. I mean, I've been to some campuses where, that they have D1 teams, they have the stadium on campus, and what people typically say is it's an event. If you're in a venue, if you're in a place where the weather's nice, students will go there just to hang out and get some sun. I was down at Vanderbilt years ago, and actually, ironically enough, it was snowing down there. I was down there for a conference in February, but just seeing their baseball stadium, I got to see those guys work out. This was years ago. I think that's when Pedro Alvarez was at Vanderbilt before he became a Pirates draft pick. A couple years ago, I was out at USC for work. Got to see their stadium. It's a cool thing. It's a cool if your college campus has a baseball culture where the stadium is on campus and people can just kind of just show up and relax. It can kind of build up there. So I think if I had my choice, it would be baseball. Interesting question there. All right, so our next question comes from TU1834, the message board. A two-part question. Number one, why don't the big guys on the team ever seem to pass out of post-ups? Sam, I'll go to you on that one.
I have no major disagreements with that. It's true. They really don't for the most part. Jake Forster's the guy I'll point to, who I've really almost never seen get the ball within the restricted area and then pass out of it. But I don't totally hate that because he's probably the best of the team at finishing inside. His post moves are one of the best on the team. One thing I'll say is that a lot of the times the guys are going up and around. They're going fading. They're not attacking. One thing I'd love to see is if they're going to get the ball inside and they're going to go up with it is go into someone, draw a foul, go up strong with it and attack the basket. But I don't really have a clear-cut answer for it. You have no disagreements for me that they're not really passing out of the post, whether it's they don't trust shooters, which I think some nights that's fair, or whether it's just guys aren't moving off the ball. I don't know. Maybe it's not a lot of off-ball movement when they get the ball inside. They just feel like that's the shot they want. They get it inside, the defense collapses, and then the play's over. I don't know. I don't have a clear-cut answer for that, but it's true. They're not passing out of the post very much.
Second part of TU1834's question here. Who on the Owl Scoop staff would look the best with the haircut of the Jadich kid who Sam Newman wrote about? So we just talked about him, the defensive lineman and center from Mater Dei Prep. If you look at his the photo on the front, it looks like he has and I have no idea what his hair looks like now, and I certainly don't want to disparage the kid, but it looks like he's got a bit of a mullet in the back. So this is the TU1834 question here. Who would look best with that haircut? I don't know. I couldn't. My hair is too. I don't have. If I were to grow my hair out, it wouldn't be super long and flowing like a rock star. So I don't know that I would look good.
Yeah, if I grew my hair out, it'd just be like super curly.
Mine froze.
Yeah, even mine.
Graham, no. Graham couldn't do it.
Kyle?
I think Graham at least has like thinner hair. Yeah, I think Kyle.
Definitely Kyle.
I think Kyle or Graham would be our two best bets there. But I don't. Yeah, for the three of us, I don't know if it would look good. I mean,
we'll just need somebody who's good at photoshopping hair to see.
Yeah,
we'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
Take a shot in the dark there.
Next question comes from 18Owl1, who says here later in the question, by the way, the username is a play off my campus address while I was at Temple 1801. Learn something new every day. Thank you for the insight there. The question here, it seems like whenever we do a good job at shutting down our opponent's main option, someone else has a big game, or often someone who is the third or fourth option just does better than their average. Missouri, Houston, ECU, UCF come to mind. Is this something you have noticed and any reason for it? I mean, part of me kind of wants to say, well, yes, I agree with you. Part of me just thinks that's what happens with basketball sometimes. Like you pick your poison and someone else can hurt you.
Are they alluding to kind of what I was saying before about shutting down the first option? And then
the second? I mean, the one of the most prominent examples I can think of, and this is going way back, and Temple fans will remember this. NCAA tournament, Temple as the 11th seed lose to 66-57 to Arizona State, who had at the time, of course, James Harden. I've joked around and said it's the best defense I've ever seen on James Harden from Ryan Brooks, who played at Lower Merion High School, was Fran Dunphy's first recruit late in the game. James Harden goes 1 of 8 in that game, 1 of 3 from 3, had 9 points, and I think he got a couple of them on just like started driving to the rim and just drawing a couple of questionable calls. I mean, they played fantastic defense on a future. I think it's a stretch to call him a future NBA Hall of Famer. Or
No,
it's-
not at
it's
all.
really
Yeah,
not that
I don't
hard to
think
get in the
He
NBA
could be a
Hall of
top
Fame.
5 player in the league right
yeah,
now.
I mean, and they just absolutely shut him down. But then Derek Glasser and Ayers are guys that hurt you there. Of course, Temple didn't help itself. I know this is all like opening a wound for Temple fans. Samaj Inge goes 0 for 10 in that game, not unlike Scooty Randall going 0 for 12 in the Indiana game. But yeah, I mean, I think that just, I don't know, is it too simple to say that just happens sometimes when you exhaust all of your efforts on really shutting down a guy? Yes, you have to make sure that some of these other guys don't hurt you to the tune of 20 or 22 a game, but I think that's, I don't know, just part of basketball sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely part of basketball. The only thing I'll add to it is if you exhaust so much pressure on shutting down one guy and it's not just like
Other guys are going to get their shots.
Yeah, if it's just Nate shutting down Ryan Daly and no one else is any part of it, then other guys aren't going to get good looks because other guys are playing defense. But when it's the kind of thing where guy drives and you have to collapse on him in the paint, you kick out and the guy's got a wide open shot. You bring double teams on a trap and you find someone else, someone's open, you're going to get, it's just the nature of the game, you're going to get better looks for other guys if you do more to shut down one guy.
Well, I feel like the only team that really worked against is, like you said, is Nate and Ryan Daly, but that's because St. Joe's doesn't really have those secondary players who are going to beat you if you leave them open.
Memphis
4 and
and
20 now, St. Joe's.
Yikes. I think Cincy was probably the best example of that in the first half when
Especially
Chris Vaught goes for 16 and Jerron Cumberland goes for 2 in the first half.
And then
they
figure
out
rules.
Yeah, they figure out a way to stop Chris Vaught. They figure him out in the second half because they came in thinking
Well, a lot of
Jerron
Cumberland's points came from the foul line.
Yeah,
though,
yeah. So it's like, how do we stop Jerron Cumberland? The first half, they knew how to do it. They figured him out. They stopped him. But Chris Vaught scored 16. Second half, Chris Vaught doesn't score until a garbage time heave pass down the floor and gets a wide open layup. And Jerron Cumberland goes for 20 in the second half. 14 of them came from the free throw line, or 12 from the free throw line, 14 in the last 2 minutes. Something ridiculous like that. So that's just the nature of the game when Temple doesn't have 5 guys that are all lockdown defenders. It's a team defensive effort.
Next question on the message board comes from Esther Boyer. John DeCarlo, congrats on Monty Scott's good game.
Congrats, John.
Thank you. Had nothing to do with it. A reference to, again, me kind of saying I thought a good game would be coming from Monty at some point. Question, has there been any internal talk about possible staff changes this offseason? What do you think has been the most surprising thing for Aaron in his first season? Addressing that from the outset, no, there haven't been any talks about possible staff changes. I understand that people get frustrated. People want them to get 5 McDonald's All-Americans. Everybody has a right to their opinion. I'd be surprised if Aaron made any changes there to his 3 bench spots with Monte Ross, Jimmy Fennerty, and Chris Clark. What do you think has been the most surprising thing for Aaron in his first season? I think just having the chance to talk to Aaron here and there about this, we've talked about this before. I think he knows that he maybe doesn't quite have all the pieces he needs to really play the way he wants to, like a Florida State as a benchmark. But I think what a lot of first-year coaches go through who are former players, who are former like NBA players, I think what they go through is, we drew up this play, and they didn't run it the way we drew it up. Like when I played, it was simpler. You just got it. And now you're dealing with a little bit more. I don't know if it's maybe surprised him, but I think what he's going through is just the grind of how hard it is, and that it doesn't happen overnight. And again, Penny Hardaway's not in his first year, and Penny came into his job at Memphis having been an AAU coach before, being in an area where they sell out games down there and it's a big deal. Even Penny's had his struggles this season. Now, obviously, the James Wiseman thing was bizarre. They've had injuries, but he's got so much talent down there, and they have their maddening moments where they just don't do things the way they're supposed to be
Steve
done.
Donahue said after the Penn game,
You got to go through it. Yeah.
You got to go through it, and Aaron's learning right now.
Yeah.
He's learning about his guys more. He's learning how to coach because this is the first time he's been a head coach. He's been through the ranks at every level of basketball, but this is the first time where it's his team, it's his guys, and he's got to run it. He's got to run it all. So it's a learning curve.
Mm-hmm. Next question from the message board comes from Green Street Al. 2-part thing. Number 1, observation. Great interviews. He wrote in all caps. Appreciate that. Great interviews with Jordan Lynch. So tribute to Sam's interview with Jordan Lynch there, Justin Lynch's older brother. And Mike Vrieswick last week, although, John, I was rooting hard for you to ask him about his disdain for Dunphy. Mike Vrieswick, in case you didn't know, runs a Temple Facebook Temple basketball Facebook page, and yeah, it was definitely outspoken in his criticism for Fran Dunphy. We did not get into Fran. I mean, we talked a lot about the program, but no, I didn't ask him about his disdain for Fran Dunphy. So Green Street Al's question is, last week the crew was asked a good question about projecting next year's lineup, and there were some good answers. There seemed to be some agreement that Coach can't play the style he wants, as we were just saying, yet because he doesn't have the type of players that fit. So I was a bit surprised that everyone mostly stuck to what will be holdovers next year, and separately, not one person mentioned Jaleel White. Care to expand upon that? So, talking about this, talking about the starting line, we talked about the starting lineup last week.
We
right?
projected the starting lineup, and we pretty much all agreed there's a chance Quincy Adamakoya finds his way in. We did not say Jaleel would, and I mean, Sam, you just raised your hand at a point, but I'll just quickly say I think more importantly, it's a crowded backcourt. I think Josh would probably get the nod and as a starter in that backcourt over Jaleel, just because Jaleel's not coming in as a 5-star prospect that's going to find his way in the starting lineup by game one. I think Josh has the experience, and I think he'll take his game up a level next year. And there's a chance maybe Jaleel goes off and he finds his way later into the season, but for the starting lineup on opening night, I would say there are guys in that backcourt that are ahead of Jaleel and where he'll be.
I just think it's hard right now when you ask us to predict in February for a lineup in October, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is when they start the season, just because we don't know how they are going to perform. We know that with Chaney and McKee is largely his philosophy comes from that, where some freshmen are going to play right away and some aren't, and you just can't tell because we don't know how they're going to play in summer workouts. We mentioned that White is healthy now, but he's also had some of the injuries. So I think you were more likely to see Quincy Adamakoya in the crack the starting lineup than Jaleel White, and that's nothing against Jaleel, but like you said, Sam, I just think there might be people ahead in the backcourt right in front of him right now, unless something were to change between now and October.
Yeah, and I think again, I think Jaleel White has a chance to be a pretty good player. My thing with saying I don't think he ends up in the starting lineup is, again, he's a 6'7" point guard who's handling the ball at Wildwood Catholic right now, and he's gotten a lot better. I mean, his shot's gotten better. He's become a more confident player. If you read Sam Cohn's story from last week on Jaleel, he talked to Dave DeWeese, and he talked about how he's just gotten better getting to the rim. When he gets there, he finishes. I mean, I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. I just don't think, I probably said this so many times last week, he's not a super like dynamically quick first step off the ball guy, but he does have a good first step. But
he's got a real soft touching traffic.
Yeah, and he does.
Right,
he's got. I think he's a smart player. Again, comparisons are probably worth jack squat at this point, and usually are. And yet here I'm going to make one. If you're looking for a Temple comparison when it comes to Jaleel White, I think he has a shot at turning out to be sort of like a Marty Collins type of player. I might put Damian Dunn in that category too, and Marty was the last first-round pick Temple had. We talked about how they obviously have to get more guys in the league, but just because I didn't mention Jaleel White not being in the starting lineup doesn't mean that he couldn't contribute next year and that he won't end up being a good recruit for him. But I think Quincy Adamakoya probably has a better chance of cracking the starting lineup or getting immediate playing time because he's a really dynamic shooter from what we can tell. But good question there. TUL's 37 has 2 questions: Villanova game prediction, score, and fan split, and will the students stand for the Villanova game? I don't know.
I think honestly, just because how funny the season has been, and now that the game doesn't mean anything,
You're going to predict the Temple win over Villanova, aren't you? Yeah, there we go.
I don't know. I feel like it just because
Let it surge through your veins.
I'll let it surge through my veins. Just because this year, it doesn't really mean anything for a tournament resume because they're obviously probably not going to make the tournament.
It would mean something for the tournament resume, but they just have to win a crap load of games after.
Yeah, no, you know where I'm going with this, but I would like to say maybe 71-67 Temple. Villanova's been reeling a little bit lately. Maybe Temple is the game for them to get back on the right stretch, but I want to go out of the box here and say Temple wins that one, and that's maybe the highlight of McKee's first year, and he's able to get them to an NIT. And fan split, I'm going to say 60-40 Villanova probably.
Final score, I'm going to go 74-67 Nova. I think it's close at the end, and Nova wins on free throws because Temple misses a shot in the final 2 minutes like they have a handful of times, and they're going to be right in it the whole time. I think Villanova is going to be in control most of the way. Temple's going to find their way into the game, make it a ball game in the final couple minutes. They're just not going to be able to close. Fan split, I would go closer to 65-35, but I mean, I've never been to a Nova Temple game at the Liacouras Center, so I can't give you an accurate estimate.
Some very specific numbers and some very specific visions have come to me right now that I'm going to share.
Let's
with you
hear
guys. 58-40. Nah. No.
You got this.
56-44 on the fan split, Nova to Temple.
Okay.
And I'm going to predict a 77-73 Temple win.
Wow.
Temple's up late.
I didn't expect to be the naysayer.
Temple's
here.
up late, 76-73. They got to stop. Pick a Nova player, Gillespie, one of those guys, misses a three. Nate Pierre-Louis gets a late rebound, hits 1 of 2 from the line. They finish off a 77-73 win.
You have a vision right now?
Fans storm the court, yes. Yeah, just it came to me in a very powerful way.
It just seems right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be like that game where it was my freshman year where they were getting annihilated and then came back and then they got annihilated again. That was when Jalen Brunson dropped like over 30 points, I think.
Yeah, it was just a dagger of a game for Temple. I mean, everything. I was talking about that game in our sports writing class the other night, wasn't I? When you talk about writing a game story and all the different subplots with it, and that game a couple of years ago. Yeah, I mean, Temple tried to recruit a lot of those guys. I mean, Jalen Brunson, not Dump's fault, but all these other guys that they tried getting in. Yeah, Cale Bridges, a lot of guys that Nova brought in that Temple wasn't able to bring in. It's something I just have a feeling that they have it in them. Now, talk to me tomorrow if they go down and honestly, even if they go and play like crap at Tulane tonight and lose, they've just been such a weird.
Anything to do with
they're just a weird team. I mean, Nova clearly has
they've been
better
able
talent.
To play up with their level of competition. This play up and down with their level of competition.
Well, when Quentin Rose plays up to the level of competition, he can be really good. If Nate Pierre-Louis does what he's, and you could say this with any team, if this person does this, if this person does that, but if Nate plays up and says, I'm going to shut down whoever on Nova's roster and be smart finishing around the rim, I think they got a shot. But that very specific vision came to me.
The thing that hurts is that it's Sunday at 1 o'clock. That is like the worst thing that could happen for this game. That's the worst time for basketball.
Is
this
it
was like
is it a 2 o'clock game or 1 o'clock
I thought
game?
it was a 12 o'clock game.
We're all over the place.
It's somewhere between 12 and 2.
9 a.m. tip-off. Bring your coffee.
But if it was like a Friday night game, a Saturday night game, even a Tuesday night game, it's a different environment. But the fact that it's a Sunday middle of the day game, I think that hurts. That's not a good time for basketball. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm the naysayer.
Maybe it's not a good time. Maybe it's not a good time for Villanova. Maybe they just
that too. Yeah.
Maybe they're just totally
remember the
distracted on
Cincy
their
game
way
last
over
year
from the main
here
line.
at Sunday, the Sunday early afternoon game. That was the worst Temple basketball game of the year.
The game is at 1 o'clock. Sam Cohn was correct.
Let's go.
There we go. Next question on Twitter comes from Jamal Doman, at Jamal Doman. So I guess no Temple Stadium for the foreseeable future. That's in reference to the news breaking this week that Temple has reached an agreement to continue playing at Lincoln Financial Field for the last 5 seasons. For the foreseeable future, no. Does this mean that Temple will never have an on-campus football stadium? No, I don't think it means that either. I mean, they quite simply needed a place to play next year. Something needed to get done. I mean, if you think about this, and again, I don't know anything for sure, but if they were to get an on-campus football stadium, even if shovels are in the ground, if I want to say this a million times, I'm not saying any announcement is imminent or anything like that, but they needed a place to play. Even if shovels were in the ground by like this time next year, you'd still need a couple years to build it. You're now 3 years into a 5-year agreement. I mean, that's still going to take some time. It's been a back and forth thing, but foreseeable future, no. Do I think that Temple re-upping with the link means that they'll never get, I'm not saying this is exactly what Jamal is saying here, but foreseeable future, no, but I still think there's very much a possibility that they're going to get a stadium on campus. Again, those things are done.
I think for a lot of
pay
people,
grades here, but
it's just like I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be too worried about that. It's just they need somewhere to play next season, and obviously they're not going to have a stadium on campus ready in the next however many months because construction just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Next question on Twitter from Getsy. At Getsy on Twitter, the university account posted it. Need your opinion. Best pizza spot on campus?
Sam, you got it.
Okay, so this is a tough one. If you're going for best quality pizza, I would say Blaze Pizza. But if you're like talking like want a slice 2 a.m., probably say Philly style.
Really?
Yeah.
Everybody I know is Maxie's over Philly style.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just
include me in that
including
group.
John.
That's just what
All my friends, including John.
all your friends, including John. I don't know. That's just where we went freshman
It's
year.
like,
so.
a pilot for a sitcom that never made it. Coming up Thursday night at 8 on NBC. All my friends, including John. Starring Tony Danza.
I'm going to go with Blaze too, but that's just because, I'm gluten-free, and they're the only place with gluten-free pizza on campus.
Blaze does have a good gluten-free pizza. You
They-
feel better. I'm not
They
completely
got
gluten-free.
They got rid of their gluten-free pizza, and then there was national outbursts, so they brought it back.
Really?
That's what, because they got rid of it, and I asked someone at Blaze one time, like, what happened to it, or when it came back, like, why was it gone? And the guy was like, there were national complaints, so we were like, we just have to bring it back.
So if you
People
eat
are
a
too mad.
regular pizza, like you'll just be in a world of hurt. You'll feel sick.
Yeah, I just get really, really bad stomach aches.
Yeah. I do feel better if I eat a gluten-free pizza. That's a tough one. I forget about Blaze sometimes, even though it's very easy to get to. Blaze is really good.
It's on the pricier side. That's the problem.
Yeah, I like Maxie's. It's like good, like New York style pizza. They have different topics and stuff like that. I don't want to disparage other places, but yeah, I think it's Maxie's, Blaze, and then
Maxie's
everything
nachos
else.
though, don't do it for me. Not good.
I can't say I've had.
Don't recommend.
Can't say I've
I
had
can't say
nachos
I would
there.
probably eat anything at Maxie's other than their pizza.
Smart.
Oh, they've got some.
Oh,
other
they
good
have
stuff.
good wings.
Real good. Like a
Yeah, that's
they have
true.
like
They
a
do have
lemon
good
pepper.
wings.
They have
They
a
have good
lemon
wings.
pepper chicken salad.
Yeah, but
That's
that's
good.
salad. Who's eating a salad?
John
kidding.
DeCaro at
I'm
the age of
kidding.
43 is eating a salad. That too. Gotta watch my figure.
No, I'm just kidding. I eat salads all the time.
I know. You guys can just put whatever you want into your bodies.
That's not true.
Another 10, 15 years before you can scrutinize what goes into your stomachs. Last question here, unless we'll do another quick check on anything else that might have come in. At the I Believe guy, Jack Fatika, longtime Temple fan, has DM'd us with a question here. He's good at coming up with scenarios. So here's one. Thoughts on Boise State's situation with the Mountain West? Do you think adding Boise for football only to replace UConn, a little shot at UConn, see what you did there, Jack, UConn, would be a good idea do you think that would be a good idea for the AAC, or would you prefer a larger expansion? I say go for broke, add Boise, San Diego State, BYU, UNLV, Air Force for football only, Gonzaga for basketball and Olympic sports, 16 for each sport, East and West divisions, and here's how Jack has it plotted out here. In the East Division, Temple, Cincinnati, USF, UCF, Memphis, ECU, Tulane, and Navy for football, Wichita State for basketball. And then the West Division, Houston, Tulsa, SMU, UNLV, Boise, BYU, San Diego State, Air Force for football, Gonzaga for basketball. Yeah, who wouldn't be in favor of that? If the ACC never expands, I never would ever predict what would happen with conference realignment. But if Temple can't get into the ACC at some point down the line, sure, that's a heck of a scenario. Your thoughts?
Be sweet to have Gonzaga.
Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer for basketball. Basically dismantling the Mountain West and bringing in some of those teams.
It'd be cool to be UNLV, especially because they're playing at the Raiders' new stadium.
Are they really? San Diego State for
I didn't know
basketball.
Yep.
If UNLV ever, found its spark and returned to the Jerry Tarkanian days again,
BYU's kind of tailed off in basketball the last couple of years, but they were
Right.
pretty good for a number of years.
So Jimmer Fredette's not walking in the door anytime soon. Do you guys know who that is?
Yes, we know
I
Jimmer
do know
Fredette
Jimmer
is.
Fredette is.
You never
He's still playing overseas, right?
Yeah.
No, he had a stint with like a year or two contract with a G League. He played in the Big Three tournament. I feel like he might have
basketball
signed,
tournament, TBT?
Yeah. I feel like he might have had a 1-year deal or something with an NBA team, but he's been pretty successful playing overseas.
That is very interesting. John, if you had to guess, what conference would you say that if Temple were to be promoted, would it be the Big Ten or ACC?
Well, I think, and this is way
totally
hypothetical. ACC. Again, I think they would have next to zero shot of getting into the Big Ten if the
That'd
Big
be
Ten ever said
hard,
we
really hard
sort
for
of
them to
have the
compete.
Northeast market with Rutgers. Now, if you're the ACC, and this would be Temple's pitch, and I'm sure it has been Temple's pitch, is that you look up the Eastern Seaboard, you have, with Maryland leaving and going to the Big Ten, you have UVA and Charlottesville, and then the next school you have going up the pike is BC, right? And everything else.
Pittsburgh too.
Yeah, well, you've got Pittsburgh you've got Pitt out to the west, but you don't really have a team in the Philly market. You don't have, I'm going through just one line, you don't have anybody in the North Jersey or New York market, right?
You have Syracuse, but
you got
that's way up there.
Syracuse, in upstate New York. So
But you don't have anybody around this.
Right,
area,
yeah,
'cause
so
upstate New York's basically Canada.
the ACC
so.
would be obviously terrific for Temple. They would take their lumps for at least a few years in basketball. You live with that. You'd probably take your lumps to a little bit of a lesser degree with football. Obviously, you have the best of the best.
Clemson.
And then there's a obviously with Clemson, then there's a drop off. But yeah, I mean, if you were projecting way down the line, better shot of getting into the ACC. But with their media rights deal, who the hell knows? But yeah, better shot at the ACC, but there's nothing imminent there.
Yeah, but it's not like the American has been proven to be one of the top-notch conferences over the past couple of seasons, especially with the product you've gotten out of football and basketball, because the teams are just getting better and better, honestly.
Yeah. So that will do it for this week. Big thank you to Rod Carey for joining us on The Scoop. Big thank you to all of you for all of your mailbag questions, for continuing to support the podcast and tune in every week. And we'll talk to you next week with some basketball to talk about, the Villanova game, any recruiting news we can bring to you. And thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.